Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Richest Men In Town podcast. I'm Mike Freeman, and along with my good friend and co-host Tyler Gould, we're excited to welcome you to our little podcast project. Tyler and I are just a couple of middle-aged husbands and dads driven to live our best lives. We want to be better every day, so here we'll be sitting down with great people. Not famous people, but great people that we admire, to learn their secret to living the rich life. Probably not the rich life you're thinking of. Our guests come in humbled and surprised at the invitation and hopefully leave feeling proud and grateful, realizing just how good they really have it. So pull up a chair, stay a while, and raise a glass with us as we toast our guests to the richest men in town. All right, Tyler Gould, in this episode, we revisit a guest. So this is a first time for us. We were really impressed the last time we sat down with Allenmichael Boasten. He shared a little bit about he shared a lot actually about his early life and his experience finding faith. And we knew that there was more to the story. So we got back to him quick and got into his calendar. Talk to me about what this second round with Allenmichael Boasten taught you.
I think I thought it was fascinating, right? This whole sojourn in the wilderness that he talked about.
He hinted at it, right?
He hinted about it the last episode. And so we got into that. That was the bulk of our episode with him. And I loved his ability to rely on his faith in the middle of the hard things. Two things that stood out to me. One is that he kept referring to the word process. I knew that if I kept to the process, I would get where I needed to be, even in those hard things. The other thing he kept saying is that I turned into that process even harder when things got tough. And I think our listeners will listen to this and they'll recognize that things got really tough for Allenmichael Boasten. But I think there's a lot of things that we can all identify with. The idea that we have trials that we all have to deal with, and some of them are harder than others. And I think he sheds a little bit of light on how we can turn to our faith to sustain us through some of those trials.
Well, and with the trial comes with it the package deal, the doubt that comes with it, right? The judgment that comes with it, and all of those things that we do to ourselves when things don't go well. And how valuable it was to hear from Allenmichael, the process got him through it, right? That tried and true process got him through it. Even though there were times when he was honest, his heart was not in it, right? But he knew no other way to get through it.
Yeah. I love that, what you just said. His heart wasn't in it, but he still was committed to the process. And let's be real. The guy turns 30 in September. So he's got 2 months. He's 29. And he's much more wise than I am or would hope to be. So I think there's just a lot of good things that people need to hear from Allenmichael Boasten about how we can weather the storms. Because let's be real, storms are coming and they're always on the horizon. And there's very, very few possibilities in our lives that we can dodge those storms. And so we have to be prepared to weather them. And hopefully learn some lessons and come out on the other side maintaining our hope. And that was a lesson I think that Allenmichael made sure that he taught us tonight.
Yeah, and doing it true to the best within us, doing it in a way that is valiant, and not succumbing to all the pressures. And you're right. I mean, storms are going to come. We're in them right now. And the situation is anything but normal. And I think that the message that Allenmichael gives is really applicable to folks that are dealing. It's interesting because we have one of our questions is how do you deal? And I think these 2 hours that we spend with Allenmichael is textbook. How do you deal? Yeah. So our listeners, I really, really want to thank those that sit down on a weekly basis and tune into what our guests have to share. We have really enjoyed having the opportunity to sit down with good friends. And we're hoping that we do something with this. Catch this episode of Allenmichael Boasten, take some notes, take some action. Let us know how we're doing. We've got a Facebook channel. We've got an Instagram channel. We've got we're on anywhere you get good podcasts. You can find the Richest Men in Town. The download numbers are impressive, and we want to thank you for the support. More importantly, do something to help those that you come in contact with. If something from an episode helped you, man, pass it on, right? Word of mouth, let people know the message that you got, the hope that you got, and hopefully this will lighten someone's burdens along the way. So, Tyler, I want to thank you personally for introducing me to Allenmichael Boasten. I think that's one of the cool things now as this show evolves, that your friends are becoming my friends and my friends are becoming your friends. Absolutely. So enjoy this episode of Allenmichael Boasten and the Richest Men in Town. Well, I know you're a Dodger fan.
Yeah.
And I hate to even bring up Giants because I'm not like a Giants fan, but I'm a Players Tribune fan. So Players Tribune is the blog Derek Jeter started.
Okay.
Right. So Derek Jeter puts out this, the opportunity for athletes to, share their voice, their perspective, current athletes, retired athletes. And I'm thinking about one, there's a post from Hunter Pence.
Okay.
When he was winning rings left and right with the San Francisco Giants.
Right.
Talking about how he would often get asked what was the secret sauce, what was the secret to their winning multiple World Series under Bruce Bochy.
Yeah.
And he gives this beautiful, he likens it to an orchestra and a symphony, and he talks about the process, not the results, right? That baseball, to be successful, 7 out of 10 times you're going to be striking out or you're going to be getting out, right? But that you go mentally and physically, you go through the process of consistently attacking the game the way you know how to do it, and let the results take care of themselves, and don't get caught up in those results. And man, I as I was thinking about the start of baseball, I thought of that article, as thinking about the conversation we're going to have with Allenmichael Boasten tonight, and like, I don't know, Tyler, if there's ever been a time where you felt like you were doing everything right in your life, but weren't getting the results. And were you okay with that because you were focused on that process, or were you pulling your hair out because you needed those results, right, to back up and almost validate that process? There's been a couple of times in my life where it wasn't hitting like I needed it to hit, and I felt like I was doing everything that I knew how to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I can certainly relate to that. I think that we, sometimes we think we're in the zone, and we think that because we're in the zone, that tough patches shouldn't crop up while we're in that zone. You know what I mean? And I believe me, I've been there, and I've had things kind of crumble under my feet and things fall apart on me when I've really felt like I should be kind of reaping the rewards of whatever I was doing, and it's hard to wrap your brain around in the moment, right? With hindsight, I can look back and go, man, I learned some valuable things during that time, and probably the crumbling that happened were some valuable lessons that maybe won't be repeated in the future. But it's a hard thing to wrap your brain around, especially when you kind of have this idea that, and I think like in maybe in the Christian world in general, and maybe this extends to other religions as well. But I think that when you feel like you're doing everything that whatever your higher power is asking of you, and then you're just getting beat over the head, it's hard to square that, And of course, you can always go back and say, hey, read Job or all that kind of good stuff, and then get slapped in the face with some reality. But I think that it's just tough to square. And
Well, I
and
think two things. I think two things. Number one, we start to doubt the process. For me, natural reaction when the process doesn't deliver the desired results, I start to question that process. And I to go 100% in our scripture wheelhouse, that scripture that you shared with me in D&C, Doctrine and Covenants,
mm-hmm.
section 6.
Yeah.
Was it 14 maybe?
Yeah.
When it was like every time you've asked me about this thing, I've given you guidance, and I've given you light, and I've given you answers. Because, I think prayer is a natural, process results thing.
Yeah.
I've been praying for this thing. I've been praying for this thing, and this thing hasn't happened. Therefore, the natural man says prayer doesn't work. Nobody's listening. Stop praying. And it's like, hold up. But I think that that's a natural reaction, right? That the process, I apply the process, and I don't get the results. Therefore, something must be wrong with the process. And then the other thought is, why are we doing the thing?
Right.
Are we doing the thing for the result? Or are we doing the thing because it's the right thing to do, come what may? And I think that's a valuable thought that sometimes does not come to me right away.
No, for sure.
Right. I feel like that's a personality flaw on my part, but I am results driven.
Yeah. And it's funny. I had this meeting the other night, we're in the middle of planning an event for a bunch of 14 to 18-year-old kids, in the middle of a pandemic. Right. And so what that looks like is scattered all over the place. We got to come up with some decent ideas. And I was telling the people that I was meeting with, I said, for the past 3 months, I've been praying daily and nightly that this pandemic would go away. And I said, and now I think I'm shifting that to try to align myself a little bit better, right? Like, tell me what I'm supposed to learn, show me what I'm supposed to learn. And if this is where we're at, tell me how I can get through this and still impact people, right? And so I'm sort of shifting that desire from making it about me, which is our tendency, right? We, like you said, we look at it and say, I'm going 10 steps forward. I should be 10 steps forward. But usually we take 10 steps forward, we get blown back a little bit. And I'm trying right now to really kind of take that path, which is, hey, this is where we are. What am I supposed to learn? Let me be humble enough to learn the lesson, that's attached to this. And I don't know, Mike, I'm 45. I'm still sort of trying to figure that one out. But I did have that epiphany after a prayer one night about this specific thing. And I was like, after I sat there for a few seconds, after I was done, just kind of thinking, and I just thought, like, you got to change your prayer. The prayer has to be different. So I don't know, and I think I think when we're in the middle of crisis and we're praying, get me through this crisis, I can't handle this. This is too much for me. Right. And the prayer probably needs to be, what am I supposed to learn from this?
Yeah, because think about it. Some people's crises never go away.
Right.
Right. I mean, there are those things in life that some things we're given the strength to overcome. Some we're given deliverance from it. And some we're given patience and tolerance to endure it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that the challenge is enduring it well. Right. I think you've said before that endurance just sounds like it sucks.
It's terrible.
Right. It sounds awful. It sounds like, like you will eat gruel the rest of your life. Right. This is going to be an awful thing. How do you go through this thing and still have your process intact? Right. Like, this thing doesn't break you, even though the results aren't what you're expecting them to be right now.
Yeah. And I think I sent you a, right. This is actually from Allenmichael's first episode, but this is Neil A. Maxwell. And he says, to think of enduring to the end as hanging in there, doing one's duty relentlessly, is not accurate. Yet enduring to the end is more than outlasting and surviving, though it includes those qualities. We are called upon, as was the prophet Joseph, to endure it well, gracefully, not grudgingly. We are also told that we must endure in faith. These dimensions of enduring are important to note. Likewise, we are asked to endure valiantly. And that's a challenge in and of itself, right? And I think that's a challenge that we, luckily, Mike, we get the opportunity to have so many challenges in our life that we kind of can start to perfect that to a certain degree. And
valiantly, you hang the word valiantly on the end,
right?
I mean, valiant to me is that's the metric.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to live valiantly.
Right.
And I think that I'm trying to be valiant in my faith. Valiant that's a difficult qualifying statement there.
That's an
especially when it comes down to enduring.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think, think about people that and we've talked about some of these people actually that and some that we both know that have some stuff that is just heavy. And I think sometimes like, oh man, I don't know that I could do that, and I watch them doing it, and and they're doing it a lot of times with maybe a forced smile on their face, but they've got a bit of a smile on their face, and I just, man.
Well, I consider myself to be pretty soft. I'd love to be at the end of my life. I'd love to be like, man, Mike Freeman was unbroken.
Yeah.
That's not happening right now. Mike Freeman is pretty soft. And I think that I don't even really like the thought of the process of becoming unbroken. Right. I think of, I don't know if you read Unbroken by Laura Hillenbrand.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah, Laura Hillenbrand, shout out to her. I don't know if you're a Seabiscuit fan, but man,
that's a great book too.
That's a great book. But yeah. Unbroken is that story, right? Louis, oh man,
Samperini, something like that, right?
Right, Louis Samperini. Yeah, Louis Samperini, and just his ordeal, right? And how he was valiant through that ordeal.
Yeah.
And he was not dependent on results, right? Every day he woke up and faced the challenge of being a POW, right? Valiantly. And I love that story.
Yeah.
And I think that's an example to us. You mentioned Job, right?
Yeah.
You think of faithful brothers and sisters in the past, and we know people now that would constitute that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would earn that title of enduring things valiantly. And then I think you add to it, persecution.
Yeah. People
straight up, because they're valiantly living a faithful life, they're targeted.
Yeah.
And they receive that unjust persecution because of their beliefs.
Well, and I've always felt like the whole endure it well. I always tell people like that's next level stuff, right? Like we sometimes we just do it. We put our heads down and we're kind of groaning and complaining as we're going through it, and then we come out the other side and we're like, wow, I'm glad that's over, Yeah. And then hopefully throughout the process of learning how to cope and to deal and and to take on some more things that are heavier, we can start to look and maybe begin the process of enduring it well. I mean, that's a hard thing, and I catch myself sometimes in the middle of hard things, wanting to be the guy that's gonna, be cursing and throwing things, and I have to catch myself sometimes and just say, look, we're gonna get through it. And that's the beautiful thing of like a family unit, right? Like there's times when I'm with my wife and I'm the guy that's getting ready to just jump overboard and bail out. And she's kind of holding me by the scruff of my neck. And then there's other times where she's ready to bail out, and I've got a little bit more in me that I can say, no, we can do it. You know.
And luckily, nobody is ever at a place where they're both ready to bail.
Yeah, isn't that weird how that kind of does work that way? But you know what's weird is I know that there's been times with Ricky and I where we've both been super like at the end of our ropes, and then like, you know, it's like she's had it and I've had it. But then I see that she's had it, and I'm like, "Whoa, I can't have it." If she's at the end, I got to inch back up a little bit and see if we can carry it a little bit.
You got to go buy some. You got to go buy some on eBay or something.
Yeah, exactly, man.
Out of it, yeah. I think I think back to that process. I think that part of the power of that thought of focusing on that process is because in that process are elements that you can control.
Yeah, absolutely.
That locus of control, and you having some responsibility there for your response to be able to say, I am going to control my temper. I'm going to control my attitude.
Right.
I'm going to gain some perspective here, right? Because I think that is kind of a saving grace as we're going through trials.
Yeah.
Right? Because if our heads start spinning on all of the things outside of our control, which unfortunately, I think that's my first reaction is, and now, instead to go in and say, what can I control about this situation right now?
Yeah, it's tough, man. I've talked to you about my youngest daughter who stresses out really hard about things, and just overthinks it, can't sleep at night, just thinking about everything. And yeah,
have you ever had conversations with your wife where Kelly has let me in on a couple of things? Like, that's how her brain works. She'll go to lay down at night to go to sleep, and her brain is running.
Yeah.
All of the things that I guess moms stay up at night thinking about, because I don't.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Right? And I guess that I'm glad she is, because at least somebody is.
Yeah.
Right. But like, I think I think that's a serious thing that a lot of people deal with.
Yeah. And I think, for us right now, it's like trying to teach our 11-year-old who just turned 11 2 days ago or something like that, trying to teach our 11-year-old that, how to kind of let things go and be okay. And, it's like you said, you can control what you can control. The other things are going to happen, and we can't get ourselves too worked up about those things.
But the crazy thing about that control is the thing you want to be able to control most is other people.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And you have to respect that principle of agency. Even people that you love, you're handing it over.
Right.
And, that's that vulnerability that comes with love. With that marriage, right?
Yeah.
For better, for worse, you're putting all of your eggs in another person's basket, and you hope that they don't just crush you,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Life is tough sometimes, but it's pretty fantastic. Right. And I think that's the maybe perspective of 45 years, because I think in my 20s, when stuff was hitting the fan, I was ready to run for the hills, now, I can kind of look at it and say it's going to happen, and we're just going to, the rain clouds are going to roll in, man. It's going to rain, and we're going to get wet every once in a while. It's going to be a drag, but here we go, right?
Well, but you've even said before that maybe the sun is the anomaly.
I think I believe that. I think that life is meant to be challenging, and it's meant to push us to, to places where we can become stronger and more reliant on something that's bigger than us. And I think those challenges not only teach us how to do that, but they also teach us how to teach those that we have a stewardship over, like our children, how they can overcome that. And I think it's important that, I mean, there's that quote by Hinckley. I think we've talked about that too, right? He says, life is a train ride. And it's most of the time it's bumpy and filled with, it's smoky and it's, lurchy and stop and go. And every once in a while you see these beautiful vistas, and I think that's kind of that's probably closer to reality than everything should go my way. And every once in a while I'll accept the hiccup.
So let me ask you this. How do you get over the sense, because I think another human tendency is to feel entitled, right? That I am doing everything right. So by golly, if there's a God in heaven, I shouldn't be putting up with the things I'm putting up with right now.
Yeah. See, that goes,
I owe me. Finger to the sky saying, I've kept your commandments. You owe me.
Yeah. I that's a hard one to, but I think that if we really kind of looked at things as far as scriptural examples of people, right? If we went that route and we said, look, let's look at people that did things the right way. I mean, there was no one that had it easy. There's not a one of them, man. I mean, Moses was a prince, right? And his reward was go lead these people that hate you and are going to complain the entire time to the promised land, right? That was his reward. So I think that there's example after example. And then, if we didn't want to go scriptural, we could just look through history. We look at people like, figures that maybe we respect and we think are great historical figures. We look at Abraham Lincoln. You and I like to read about Abraham Lincoln. I mean, his life was hard, and not just hard as a kid. It was hard as a married man. It was hard as a father, right? It's just hard. And I think, and in fact, there's a book that I read, oh my gosh, maybe it's called The Mind of Lincoln, but it talks about sort of his dealing with anxiety and depression, and how that kind of forged this attitude that he could overcome really hard things.
Well, Theodore Roosevelt?
Yeah.
Right? Sickly as a kid?
Yeah.
And he realizes that he can actually will and shape his body, right? Yeah. And he takes up boxing and he excels in sports throughout, as a student in Harvard. But he focused on what he could control and realized that, with that, a lot of things are actually in our control.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that right now we're looking at our lives and we're complaining, but if you really were to be honest with yourself and look at your scope of control that you have on some of these aspects, you could do something about it right now.
Yeah. And there's a quote by Charles Swindoll, and I am just going to paraphrase it because that's what I do best, is paraphrase things, right? But he basically says the one thing that we have, the one string that we have that we can play is our attitudes and how we react to things, right? And that does make all the difference. When I was talking to my 10-year-old the other day, or she's 11 now, right? I just said that, but she wanted to go to the beach with her cousins. She's had an earache from the water, and so we're like, you can't go to the beach. You can't get in the water and swim in the water. She's super upset. I said, but you can go to the beach and you can get up into your waist and jump around and play with your cousins, but you can't put your head in the water. Well, that was like the end of the world. I don't want any part of that, right? And I was like, you have a choice here. I'm giving you 80% fun, or we could do 0% fun. Like, which one do you want, right? And I think that our perspective is important too, and on how we view things. Her thought was, if I can't get all the way into the water, then this is a complete waste of time, right? And I think that's a rough way to be thinking about things.
Well, and I think one of the things that's going to be key as we look at this this pandemic that we're in and the upcoming challenges that will be presenting is that perspective taking, right? How do I get other people's perspective? I just saw a post from somebody, family member, not going to mention any names, but they probably will know who they are as they listen to this. But posted in outrage what their kids' district was posting as new curriculum resources and new books that their kids would be reading,
right?
In their school this year. And she was outraged that how dare the school make these kids read these books. But I think that what she's missing is that's how you gain perspective of others.
Yeah. And I think, look, on the bright side, school's canceled this year, so she doesn't worry about it. Don't sweat it. You're just gonna be at home. You can read the funny papers for all we care, right?
Allenmichael Boasten.
How's it going, man?
Welcome to the Richest Men in Town, part 2 for you. How are you?
I know I'm doing good. Glad to be back on. Long time no hear, right?
Yeah, we're excited to have you. And since we have you, I just want to give you a shout out because you're breaking records. And now, granted, we're like 11 episodes in, so we don't have quite a thick record book, right?
Yeah.
But the listeners for your episode were off the charts, man.
It's because I listened over and over and over. I listened to it probably 100 times myself. I like hearing my voice. What can I say? No.
You do have a nice voice, man. I will give you that. I have the opposite problem. Like, I never listen to the episodes because I can't handle hearing my voice, right? So.
Yeah.
How are you? How's the family?
Man, we got some things moving, man. It's going really good. With COVID and everything, it is a lot of people I think are pessimistic in regards to just circumstances and things like that. But me and my wife are optimistic, probably because we don't have kids. So we're like, hey, we can grind it out. We can get it how we need to and be successful. So we got some things in the work as a couple that we're excited about. So I'm gonna keep it close to my vest. But
yeah, because I'm like, dang, you know me, I'm gonna start digging right there, man.
We may be tempted to circle back on that from time to time and just kind of poke. We'll just poke.
Yeah. And my wife, I can't say too much about it because she's it's not because I don't want to. It's because she's very like, just let it play out. You know, I'm like, okay, all right, we'll let it play out.
Well, I will say that last time we had you on, we spoke for a couple of hours. So you get to talking for a couple of hours, and pretty soon you get loose lips and ships start sinking, right?
And I won't hear the last of it. Remember, I don't know when we were talking, but this is forever, right? This is recorded.
That's right, man.
So right. I'm careful. She can easily pull up the tapes, like, hey, what's going on? So I'm gonna be a little bit more mindful of what I talk about. But things are good, as good as they can be with how turbulent the world seems right now. And so we got a lot to be thankful for. We got a roof over our head. We've been able to make ends meet and survive. So we're good. That is, to me, that's if you can do that right now, you're good.
Well, survives a good segue because before you joined in, Tyler and I were talking about enduring, right? Enduring trials. We talked a little bit about that process and trying to focus on the process and what we can control versus the outcome and the results. And that's probably some sales. You as a salesman, you've probably heard that before, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Where
absolutely.
You work on your show up, you work on your skills, and the process will take care of itself, right? And I likened it to baseball. Tonight's opening day. We've got baseball back, and that's exciting. I'm not a Giants fan, but there was an article from Hunter Pence back in the day on the Players Tribune talking about the process, right? Mm-hmm. And in baseball, you think about it, a good baseball player still is unsuccessful 7 out of 10 times. but they don't let that kind of get in their head. They just attack it with the same process day in and day out, you know, and what does that look like in our lives? And have we ever been in a place where we've been attacking it with the same process? Nothing in the process has changed, but the results aren't hitting, right?
Yeah. It's I love that whole concept of process, because sometimes you like I change process, I change sales picks, I change tactics, like trying to identify what works. And then when you find that process that works and you know it works and you're not seeing the success that you think you should see from that process, staying consistent to what you know works. That is challenging. Like when you found a niche and you've had some success with it, and you're like, man, I just got to stick to that process. And then when you don't see the process, you don't see the success from that process, trying to change and tweak it and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's almost like I don't know if you're a fisherman, right? But you're fishing on the bank and you see the guy next to you hauling it in, and you're like, wait, what's he doing? So then you go to what he's doing, and he makes the change, and so then it's like you're chasing, right? You're always chasing the next thing.
I think it's interesting too that, you know, the idea of the process, because I think it's, in some ways it's comforting to have a process, because when things are falling apart around you, you have these things that you can turn to, that you can kind of rely on. But I think too, there's been a lot of people in life, in the history of the world, who have maybe lost their faith because of difficult things that were happening, right? And we're committed to a process, but when, like you said, Allenmichael, when they don't see the results that they had expected to come from that process, then they sort of abandon that process, you know, and then what, right? I mean, we could have that could lead us down a whole different discussion, but I think that there's some comfort to be had in the process. And I think that Mike and I talked about, we were talking before you got on too, about perspective, you know, how important that is to have perspective as well when we're in the middle of our process. You know, I think that a lot of times we look at it, we say, man, it could never be worse than what it is right now. You know, this is the worst it's ever going to get. And I got news for everybody on this podcast today. It's probably not the case, man. Right? So,
well, and that's why history is so important, right? That's why it's important for us to understand what came before us, because what came before us is always something that we can draw comparisons to, right? We're thinking right now, this is the worst thing ever. You know what? This is not the worst thing ever.
Exactly.
Not even close to the worst thing ever.
I just had sushi the other night in the middle of the pandemic. You know what I mean? Like, how bad could it be?
Yeah.
Well, hey, Alan,
yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Allenmichael, I got to tell you that I thoroughly enjoyed the time that we had together, and the lessons that I learned the last time we were talking. You started from the beginning and kind of walked us through a phenomenal journey that led you to the wonderful metropolitan area of Chula Vista, where you met the Gould family and made that connection. And then here we are a handful of years later, and we're bringing you into our podcast. But, you know, we didn't even scratch the surface, really, of the story. And that's where Tyler and I, as soon as we got off, it was like round two. Get on that guy's calendar, get Allenmichael back so that we can pick up where we left off. But Tyler, really quick, what struck you? You introduced me to Allenmichael. What struck you as you think back on the podcast and the lessons that Allenmichael was sharing with us?
Yeah, I loved the how you reflected on some of the things that your mom and your dad, the lessons that they had taught you, you know, and I just thought that was powerful for a couple reasons, right? I think that sometimes you talked about how maybe things weren't always perfect, you know, at home, but your mom and dad were still committed to to you guys, and they were committed to teaching you some valuable lessons. And I think that's perspective, right? Because I think that sometimes we grow up in, we have some tough things that go on in our lives, and it's easy to sort of bail out on those people that maybe we look at and say, man, they weren't as perfect as they should have been or could have been, or as perfect as I needed them to be. But I think it's important to be able to look at that in the context of what was going on at the time, right? And be able to say, man, my parents, they had it rough sometimes, but they really taught us some powerful things. So I really appreciated that part of our discussion the other night. And, I think that your journey in connecting some of the dots of things that had happened in your life, from the woman on the side of the road, right? Your dad having that spiritual experience, driving an hour to church, and then going to off to college, and your dad asking you to read the book of Proverbs and the Book of Mormon, right? I think that those are some powerful things that maybe individually probably don't mean a whole lot, but collectively they've brought you kind of right where you are today, sitting in front of us. And I love that idea of really being able to reflect and be introspective and say, what's got me here, and what's going to get me where I need to be moving forward. So I love that whole arc that when we talked about that with you, Allenmichael, and I'm looking forward to what tonight brings. What about you, Mike? You didn't know Allenmichael at all, and I know you barely trust my judgment. So when I told you about Allenmichael, you were very no. So tell me what your takeaway was after spending a little bit of time.
Well, I think I've talked to you about just how much of my story I see in Allenmichael's story.
Yeah.
I mean, we were both phenomenal football talents. Sorry, I had to give that a try, right? I mean, something. No, but I mean, I joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints at the age of 19. Right. I had an amazing mother who was the rock of me growing up, when everything around was kind of not so stable and steady. Right. And I think about in that podcast, there's a line, Allenmichael, that you shared, that you used to share with people that you served your mission with. And it went something like, never underestimate the power of God. Right. And the Spirit of God, the power of the Holy Ghost in the lives of people that want to change. Right. Because you were kind of reminiscing in how you weren't really doing anything to qualify, so to speak, right, for personal revelation and to receive answers, but you had a repentant heart. And you had some experiences that humbled you. And I just loved the things that you shared, because they really lined up with patterns of a rich life that have been shared from our previous guests. At the last night, Tyler and I got together and we're just reminiscing about what the different episodes and our guests have shared with us. And it's just amazing how many common connecting the dot type experiences come out of the lives of the guys that we've sat down with. So, but, a little tribute to the late, great Paul Harvey.
Yeah, we did this again, huh? We're going there twice.
Yeah. There is the rest of the story, Allenmichael, and that's what brings us here tonight, right?
For sure. You
had an opportunity to serve a mission, and then life happened, right? And you had some experiences after that. And the mission is a microcosm for life. I've always said, like, the mission has lessons that are going to be blessings throughout your life, right? But I am curious to tap into that. I'm curious to tap into that sojourn in the wilderness.
Yeah, I think that's
a great reference to.
Left us off with, and we've been on that cliffhanger ever since. So.
It was
Take us to New Jersey, brother.
It's so cool, man. Like I have to start with just what the process was, because through everything that I've been through, it's the process that I've stuck to. And it's been a spiritual process, but I think it's important to acknowledge what it was. It was a process. So like even before, like as I put in my mission papers, so I put in my mission papers August 2012. Okay. Super excited to get them back. And it took a while. And so I put in mission papers in August, and a month later, you're supposed to have a call. It don't take too long. This was back when they got the envelopes back. So I'm badgering my bishop. Hey, what's up? Because at this point, I'm now not playing football. I'm not in school because in my mind, I'm finna go on a mission. And the longer I'm there, the more questions I'm getting. Like, hey, what you doing? Because at this time, no one in my circle, or not even my family, no one's really active in the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so I associate with very religious people, but the concept of going on a 2-year mission and the structure of that is foreign. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm going on a mission. And so like, wait, you're not in college.
You're in limbo.
I'm in limbo. So I'm waiting August pass, September pass. I'm like, okay, I'm talking about my bishop about it every week. November rolls around, still don't have a call. December, and so I'm like, okay, all right, what's going on? I don't want to sit out another semester of school. And so I'm like, okay, do I get back in school? Do I still wait? And we ended up changing bishops at the time. And so keep in mind, I'm still relatively new to this whole Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, this whole Mormon thing. Like, changing bishops, does that affect whether I can go on a mission or not? I don't know. Like, come January, I'm just in limbo. And so like, I'm badgering him about it. He doesn't know why it's taking so long. And so we finally get something back, and they say, okay, you need to redo this and submit again. It's like, okay, January.
That was January that you got that.
Yeah. It's like, all right.
April.
And so 4 months going by, and it's like still nothing, but at least we heard something back. And so we redid what we need to do. February go by, March goes by, and I still don't have a call. And so I remember in December having like really thinking about what I was doing in regards to my faith walk, striving to keep these commandments when no one around me is doing it, like not being in school, playing football, going on a mission. Like, I'm really thinking about these things. And I started doubting whether or not I could serve a mission. Like, I was like, well, I probably just can't go. Like, I just didn't know. And I remember praying and being really specific with God. Like, even if I can't serve a mission, I'm committed to this. Like, even if I couldn't serve a mission, I was just going to go get married and live a happy, faithful life. Like, that's what I was committed to. And so time goes by, and it's really cool. I remember, and my family can tell you this, man, crazy as I got to tell you this story. So come April, still don't have a mission call, but we've made the determination, me, my dad, my mom didn't come actually. Me, my dad, my sisters, my little brother, we all pack up in the van, drive to Utah from Alabama for conference, right? And so we make this commitment to pack up in the van and drive out to conference. First ever experience. We're not active. I'm the only one going to church on a consistent basis. But we drive out to Utah, and on the way out there, my stake president calls. He says, they've issued the call. And so I'm like, okay, so we got something. And so I knew I had a call waiting for me when I got back home, which was pretty sweet. But we end up going out to Utah. My dad, let me tell you how less active we were at the time. So we're in a van driving to Utah, right? And we before we took off, we pull over, and my older sister, she was like, hey, look in Dad's cup. I was like, what you mean? She's like, check his cup. And I checked the cup. My dad has alcohol in the cup. And I'm like, we're finna drive 30 plus hours to Utah to go to General Conference, and he's swigging on some alcohol. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And so we start this trip off, and I kid you not, it was we argued for the first 2 hours. Literally, everyone in the car was just arguing. And I'm not talking about bickering arguing. I'm talking about veins popping out the neck arguing. Like we just yelling at each other headed to conference. We 2 hours in the drive and like we almost got into an accident, like a real bad accident. And so we pull over to the side of the road, we say a prayer, and the peace that came inside that little minivan was undeniable. And it was a positive trip the rest of the way, like there and back, because we drove there and back, and it was so positive. But yeah, so I had to wait 8 months for a mission call from August to April.
Wild.
And so sticking to, I started to understand like, okay, this is not something that, like I was committed. It wasn't something that I was going to turn off. Like I had turned away from a lot of stuff. And so I'm walking down this path now and I'm committed to it. And I did fortunately get a mission call.
Allenmichael, before you go past that point, what solidified that commitment to the process in you? I mean, I know we talked last time and you had kind of a series of experiences and people that were in your life, but I mean, even given that, right? I mean, how you said you haven't received a mission call, you offer a prayer, and in the prayer you say, I'm committed to this no matter what. Where does that commitment, where does that come from?
Honestly, a lot of it came from my patriarchal blessing, which I got, and I would read it often, and it talked about my mission, and I'm like, dang man, what? I put in my mission papers, like, what's up? And it started to, and maybe this is why I've never really thought about why I want to move back to Mobile so much, to Alabama. Like I tell my wife all the time, she's like, I don't want to go to Alabama, I don't want to go to Mobile, but I've always felt the pull there, and I started thinking like, well, maybe my mission is just to be here. Like that's what my mission is. Maybe I'm just to share the gospel, be a good person, and be a faithful member. And for me, it was like I was learning so much, like just about how to exercise faith, like what repentance was, understanding more about the Savior Jesus Christ, like really understanding the Bible and the Book of Mormon and how they go together. So like I was being converted to Christ, and I knew this was helping me do it. And so I wanted to continue to grow my faith in Jesus Christ, and I knew that these tools were helping me. So I didn't want to walk away from the tools, but because before I really committed to the church, I looked other places. I looked at Jehovah's Witness. I looked at Catholicism. I looked at plenty of Protestant churches. Like I looked around before I really committed to doing this, and these tools were helping me grow. And so I was committed to that way of life that I had decided to walk down.
See, I like that a lot, because I think that, you know, we talked earlier today about, you know, people maybe, you know, they're relying on their faith, and then they have hard things happen, and then maybe they abandon that faith because it's not getting the result that they had expected or hoped for. But I think that it to be able to go through the process, whether that's reading scriptures or praying or just, you know, whatever that is to exercise your faith, and then be able to look back at each step in the process and say, here's the benefit that came from that, and here's the plus that I got from that, right? I think that's huge, you know, because a lot of times we do these small things with our eyes on the prize 3 miles down the road, saying that's what I'm shooting for, and we're stepping over, or we're ignoring all of these little blessings that are being sprinkled at us as we're along the path. And I love that you're saying, well, look, I was doing these things, and I knew good things were coming from these things, so I can't just bail on it, right? I love that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, I don't know how you push through the doubt.
Oh,
right? As you're sitting there, I'm thinking they forgot about me. I'm thinking I'm judging myself, right? Oh, maybe I'm going to self-select and not serve a mission, because clearly that thing's supposed to take 2 weeks, maybe a month, and you're months down the road, and it's like that human nature to just say, I'm not good enough. Like this is just, I don't know. I don't know how you push through that. It really makes me think of like, and I know this is apples to orange. This is not even a comparison that's really a worthy comparison. But I think of Abraham and Isaac, right? Abraham is blessed with Isaac. And that in and of itself is a miracle. And then he's commanded to sacrifice Isaac, right? And what's got to be going through his head. And I love, we have in some of our content and some of our lesson materials, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we had a prophet share out maybe the reason for that, because we know the rest of the story, right? Abraham does not have to sacrifice Isaac, but he was tested. And the lesson is Abraham needed to learn something about Abraham, right? And going through that. And I'm just wondering, Allenmichael, in your own way, was that a little bit of maybe the reason why, now that you're on this end of it, looking back, where maybe you needed to learn a little something about yourself and this gospel, right?
Yeah, I think that, like, now that I reflect on it, I absolutely feel as though I learned that I was committed to the gospel of Jesus Christ, whether or not I had served the mission. Because the reasons I chose, like, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna serve for X, Y, and Z purposes. At the end of the day, me waiting, I committed more to the gospel of Jesus Christ. Like, I just committed more to this way of life and this lifestyle instead of serving the mission for X, Y, and Z purposes. And during that time, I taught a lot of people in regards to, like, missionaries, going out with the missionaries, like reaching out to my friends. Hey, y'all want to meet the missionaries? Hey, you want to do a Bible study? Like, I'm going to, like, one of my best friends, Terrence, I'm going to his Bible study with him. Like, I was so desiring spiritual knowledge to, like, I was just committed to this way of life. And whether a mission came or not at that point, I don't think it would, like, if I would not have served the mission, it wouldn't have deterred my desire to grow spiritually.
So as I listen to that, one thing that comes out loud and clear, and I really hope that listeners tune into that, what you just said, because so many times I honestly think we're doing things on a transactional basis. I'm going to do this, and in return, I'm going to get that X, Y, and Z, right? Whether it's a mission or, a calling, or I'm going to reach out to this person, but I'm going to get something back from it, right? And that's not the game, right? The game is we're going to do what's right to do, come what may, right? I'm going to play that process, and the results are going to take care of themselves. Maybe they're going to be great. Maybe they're going to be nothing, but it doesn't change the fact that I'm going to do the right thing.
Well, I think the interesting thing about that, Mike, and I agree with that. I like that observation, but I think that the transaction is completed at some point in there, right? When we start to forget about what the reward is supposed to be, and we're doing it just come what may, then the reward comes, right? And I love that I can't even imagine if I put in my mission papers when I was 18 years old and it took 9 months to get my call.
Gigs up, dude. Nope.
Yeah. Who knows where I'd be walking right now? That's crazy. So I love that. But I think too that you've definitely come down a different path in that you were seeking some stuff and you were looking for some answers, and I don't think the mission was the thing that you needed to find those answers. I think a mission, in my own opinion, is a solidifying event in our lives, right? If we do it right, we come in with a faith, and we come in with a belief, and then we have these 2 years of time or 18 months of time that we can put those things into action, and it solidifies where we're at if we do it the right way. But I think that 9 months was solidifying just as much as that mission would have been, right?
Yeah, and it's crazy because, like, my life was at that point in time. I had my own place. I had a nice car. I was playing football. I was in college. And so by a worldly standpoint, I was doing good. Like, I was okay. but I was longing for this spiritual knowledge, and like I wanted to. My motivation changed over the course of 9 months. It went from, yeah, I'm gonna serve a mission because of what it can do for me, to I want to serve a mission because I really want to share what I know to be true, what I know and how I've come to know it to be true. And so over the course of 9 months, it started changing to like, I want to share this because I know it's true, and not I'm gonna go on the mission because of what it can do for me.
Yeah, I love that. So 9 months later, you get back from Salt Lake. There's a mission call waiting for you. You open it up and it says San Diego. I'd just like to get a glimpse of the reaction of that for a second.
So it's actually, I think it's up on my Facebook. I let my little sisters open it and read it.
Oh,
And
nice.
so they read it, and you can see the whole Ward family and my people there, and it was a great experience. It was so interesting though. So the mission president for the Florida Tallahassee mission, President Jensen, he let me go out with the missionaries. I was going to the zone conference with the missionaries there. Like, I was really involved with the missionaries, and so me and him had a really good relationship. And I asked him, I was like, President, what do you think I'm gonna go on my mission? As everyone do. And he
Right.
thought about it. He looked at me. He thought about it, and he said, San Diego, California. And I felt that. I was like, man, that felt good. All right, I can see that. And so when it was San Diego, I was like, okay, he was right. He knew something I didn't. So I thought that was pretty cool. But
And
man, I
for
was
the
so
record, Allenmichael has predicted my 2 kids. Actually, he's predicted for all 4 of my kids.
notable.
And
So far, I'm 0 for
he's
2.
He's 0 for 2 so far.
Yeah, man, I'm 0 for 2. So it ain't easy predicting, but he was spot on, and I have no doubt that he was inspired about it. I have no doubt that San Diego is where I need to be. And man, I was super excited. Like, I get to the mission, and I got my first companion who I love so much, Elder Jardine. And I had really good companions. I don't know if I was just blessed, but I loved all my companions sincerely. Like, and we just, it was great. But my first companion,
All of them? Hold on. All of them?
yeah, I can name
You
you
don't have
every
to name
companion I
names.
had.
You don't have to name names, but you loved every single one of them.
And not only that, I promise you, I can name something that I knew I was in that companionship for what they taught me. They taught me something, and I really did. I keep in contact with a lot of my companions now. Like 2 of them became some of my best friends. Cause up until this point, I still have lifelong friends. Like, I got my boys that I grew up with, and we friends, but we're not of the same faith. And so the depth of our friendship is just hard to get deeper than what it is. But with my mission friends, it's like that depth is so much deeper. And it was weird to have friends like that, to where it's just a really deep, faithful, same belief, like moving towards the same goal type of friendship. But yeah, I love my companions, all of them. They know it. Now, we argue, we didn't always see eye to eye,
Sure.
but there is no doubt that we loved each other, and I got along with all my companions.
Yeah, I love that, man. I think it's interesting though that just as an aside, you talk about how faith helps deepen those relationships, and that's an interesting thought. I think maybe that idea of eternal goals that we're all shooting for together, maybe that does something different. But yeah, you're right. I have guys that I've grown up with, known my entire life, and love them to death. We're still tight, right? We still talk, but it's a different conversation than what we're having here,
Yeah, for sure. And my friends don't know it yet, but they'll join the church eventually. I'm
Yeah.
slowly working on. They'll listen to this podcast, and they'll catch that little nugget. I'm coming for you guys. Don't worry. But yeah, so I serve a mission, and man, we can talk hours. As anyone who serves a mission, they can talk hours about those experiences. But my faith matured exponentially. Like, I was a pretty faithful person going into the mission, but like, my faith matured and my confidence matured. Like I was comfortable with talking to anybody about anything. I just went 2 years trying to teach people about Jesus Christ. Like I'm comfortable with talking to anybody about anything because a lot of people don't want to have anything to do with religion. And so you get the worst kind of rejection on the mission. You get the greatest blisses of sharing the gospel and seeing people get baptized and become faithful to Jesus Christ is great. And so I really matured and gained a lot of confidence. But they say pride goeth before the fall, right? and that's when we get post mission, right?
All right.
Man. And so like I get home from San Diego, a buddy of mine, Chris Lee, Tyler, Chris, like, dude, let's do some solar, like let's go make some money. And when I say I am beyond broke, when I got off my mission, I didn't have a job. My family still economically challenged. And so I go home to, I don't know what is going on. And so he connect me with a guy in South Carolina, a good buddy of mine, Leo. And I go sell solar, and I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to sell, but I know I can sell. Like I'm just gonna go and try it. And I started I sold for a month in Connecticut, and did like 10,000 my first month. I just was on top of the world. You couldn't tell me nothing, man. Like I was, oh man, I was stoked. So my first month did that. I moved so we end up going to Columbia, South Carolina, and we're selling solar. Cost of living is super cheap. I got a YSA, a young single adult ward that I'm attending. I got a temple 30 minutes away. Like I am in nirvana. I am in heaven. Like this is my heaven. I got everything that I need. And life was so good. I know. Yeah. Life was so good. And so I ended up getting my little brother. He was back home, and he ended up coming to stay with me in South Carolina. And that was my biggest blessing post-mission, was helping him get on a mission and spending time with him and growing our relationship. So like everything was going great. I'm like, I got this process. After a mission, you understand how to live the gospel on a level where you didn't previous to a mission, to serving a mission. And so, like, I got this process. There is a concept of waxing strong in the presence of God. And like, man, I felt like I had all cylinders going. Like, I felt like I was in tune with the Spirit of God. I was receiving revelation in regards to the things that I needed to do. Moving to Columbia, South Carolina was great. Getting my little brother to come stay with me was great. He was serving a mission. At the time, I'm dating. Like, I'm excited. I'm vocal about my desire to want to be married. I'm stoked. Everything's going good. And so things are going so well, I end up getting a promotion. And so I'm like, okay, all right. I get an opportunity to go manage a team in New Jersey. At this time, I'm dating, and I'm engaged, and so I'm about to get married. So I'm like, man, life is good. And so I remember, I got it in my journal. I used to keep a really good journal, and I remember praying, and I had intense impressions that New Jersey would be a refiner's fire. I'm like, and I remember writing that down. I was like, okay, life is great, but come with me. I can handle it. Like my faith is so strong at this point. So my little brother going on a mission. A lot of people, maybe a lot of people, I'm pretty sure a lot of people know it, that I was actually married. So this is my second marriage, right? Mm-hmm. And so I go on a mission, and I'm living faithful, and I'm praying for Heavenly Father to point me to who I need to marry, right? Like they say, you pray, he'll let you know if it's good or not. And I'm like, all right, I'm listening. I'm praying. What about this relationship? Okay, what about that? And I finally identify one where I'm at peace and it's good. And she was at peace and it was good. And so I moved to New Jersey, end up getting married out in San Diego, like dream place. And everything was great. And I'm in New Jersey, and we're only together for 3 weeks. like that. And so we end up getting married. We move on to New Jersey, and I won't get into a lot of the specifics of it, but we're only together 3 weeks, and now we're separated. And I'm like, everything just came so fast. And like throughout the time of from South Carolina to New Jersey, I received confirming revelation, I would call it, like this is a good choice. This is going to be good. And I stayed humble about it, and like everything. Let me rewind a little bit, okay? So when I moved to New Jersey, I moved out there first. She was still in where she lived, and so I moved out to New Jersey, and the local congregation, the bishop, he was actually a marriage counselor. Didn't pay much attention to it at the time. I didn't care what his profession was, but he just so happened to be a marriage counselor, and so we moved to New Jersey after the wedding. We come out to New Jersey, and it's tough for reasons that I'll leave out. But 3 weeks later, now I'm just there by myself, and I'm like, how did I get here? And I'm at this point, I don't think divorce is the question. I'm like, okay, well, mate, we'll work through it. We wait, like we just something to work. And so I'm meeting with my bishop, and it was so excruciating. It was a pain that I had never experienced before. Just the agony of the embarrassment, the hurt, the lack of bliss that's supposed to be there after a marriage, like all these things that I'm experiencing in New Jersey, and I've only been there. I moved to New Jersey in June, got married in September. By the end of September, I'm by myself in New Jersey. No family, new work. I got to manage a team, and then not only with managing that team, work turmoil, like everything was just hitting me at once. And I'm like, how? Like, how did I go from South Carolina, where life couldn't get better, to, and I at that point I had made more money in my life than I knew like what to do with. And I'm like, how did I go from that to this, where I have no idea what is going on with my life? And so like I say sojourning in the wilderness, because that's what it was, man. It was a bunch of doing things that I just didn't know what to do. Like I just didn't know where to go. I didn't know, like my bishop was my angel at the time. And so like I was with him and counseling with him, and he was an angel. I needed to be there with him during all of this. And I feel like it was an episode to test my faith, which, oh my goodness, like I can't even explain the pain that was for me. Like up until that point, my whole existence, or what I was changing for, was to be a husband and have a family. And to have, from 19 to 25, 6 years, go up in flames in 3 weeks. It's like, well, my goodness, like, and so yeah, I'll get into it a little bit more, but
let me ask you a question. You know, that's some tough stuff, right? That you're dealing with at the time, and you talked about the sort of the highs that you were on prior to that, and that you felt like your faith was just, hey, bring it on. I can handle pretty much anything at this time, right?
Yeah.
So when this happens, talk to me a little bit about your relationship with your faith, if you don't mind, and how did it shake? Did it crumble? Did it talk to me a little bit about that, or was it always just right where it was prior to?
Yeah, so I can't. It did it. So when she left, the divorce didn't happen immediately. Like that wasn't what the thought
Sure.
was. It was like, you're lonely, you're going through something, but it'll be okay. A month goes by, no communication. Another month go by, couple emails and a phone call. And so I'm like, okay, well, this don't seem to be going in the direction that I'm hoping. And so my faith at that point was turn to God. He can fix it. He can do it. Like, if anybody can do it, he can do it. And so, like, that process, you know how they say, like, you get knocked down, but you get up and you go harder with that process. You go at it harder. And so, like, I felt like my faith was against the wall. And so, like, I'm reading, I'm praying, I'm going to the temple. Like, I started doing those things. I wouldn't even go to work. The highlight of my day would be going to spend hours in the temple. Or, like, I'm on the phone with the bishop every day, getting blessings every week. Like, I just turned into it so much to where it was hard not to see that it was being hurt, but it hadn't really hit the point to where, like, hey, this is you guys are going to get divorced. Like, that concept
Right.
didn't hit me. And so, like, as I'm turning more into my faith and things aren't getting better, it's becoming harder to do. And so, like, I wrestled with God. It wasn't Heavenly Father, I love you so much. Thank you so much for everything. It's like, look, dude, what's going on? Like, what? I've been living my life to receive these blessings, and now they're eluding me for reasons that I don't understand. Like, I've sought for answers. I've sought for assurance that this was a good decision. I felt as though these were affirmations, like, yes, continue to do this. And now I'm here. And so I'm wrestling, and it got to the point to where I just didn't know. Like, I still did the process. I still went to church. I still went to the temple. I still prayed. I still met with the bishop. Like, I did those things. But I'm like, why am I, man, I don't want to put the effort back into it. Because around December, it was becoming clear that it wasn't going to work. And towards Christmas, between Christmas and New Year's Eve, she's like, I'm done. Like, I don't want to do it. And so I'm like, man, that was the ultimate low. Because at that point, I'm like, okay, why? I learned a very valuable lesson, and I'll talk about it. But I'm questioning why, just the why me? And, like, I'm extremely embarrassed. People don't even know what I'm going through. They think I'm happily married, and I'm divorced, and I haven't seen my wife in 4 months. Like, and so all of that on top of work was a lot to bear, a lot.
So tell me, you talked about turning into it and kind of digging into the process as you're maybe feeling like your faith's a little bit rocked here, I would imagine, right? You're the questions of, hey, I'm doing everything I should do, and one of the things Mike and I were talking about prior to the show was that concept right there is like, what happens when we're doing everything that we should be doing, and yet the world still starts to crumble around us? I mean, what allows us to stick to the faith? What I thought was interesting that you just said, Allenmichael, is that you turned into it, and even though you were questioning the result, you kept doing the process. Why is that? Why was that?
For me, I was to the point to where I didn't know what else to do. Like, at that point, what do you do? Like, other than what you've always done? I felt like what I had done got me to the place where I was, of all that joy and happiness and hope and experiences that I wanted to have in that marriage. And so, like, I'm like, that's the only thing I knew how to do. The only thing that I knew how to do was turn to God and go and talk to my bishop and my stake president also. But, like, that's all I knew. I can't really tell you why I did it.
But
That was just what I knew to turn to.
I think maybe you did tell us why you did it, right? Because I think right there you said, this was the thing that brought me to where I am, right? This was the thing that, and I think that having some context and some perspective on what we're dealing with, if we could step out of those hard moments, and you're kneeling at the bed, right, pouring out your soul, asking God why, if we could step out of our bodies for that moment and get away from that broken person that we are at that time, and maybe look back down the path and see all of the good that's happened because we have done what we've done, right? And then we could look forward up the path and say, hey, the path, it's not a cliff right here, right? The path continues on. I think that's important. And I think you maybe not recognizing at the time, but I think that's exactly what you did, right? You just said, I was doing these things prior to this event, and this is what brought me to where I am. I love that idea, and we've said it before, but there is a lot of power in remembering where the blessings have come from and remembering that blessings have come, right? I think that there's a lot of power in that.
But Allenmichael, do you remember when it turned, right? I'm touched that you were doing all of those things, throwing yourself into that faith, hoping that it would be fixed. Do you remember that prayer, that first prayer offered when it shifted, right? From trying to fix it to help me with this concept of divorce?
It didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual thing. But it shifted from, man, this hurts, to, well, I'm glad it happened as quick as it did. Like, I'm glad I was able to get out from under something that wasn't going to work long term. And I started seeing that as a blessing. Like, I thought that if there was one person that could go through this experience with that person, it would be me, and not have a resentful heart. And so I was like, well, if this was the trial that I had to go through, if this was an experience I needed, I'll be okay. And it hurt, like, not knowing what my position in the church would be, like, not understanding how I'm divorced. I'm like, okay, now I'm divorced. Like, what does that look like? How do I go forward? Like, what do I do dating wise? How do I, like, I just had so many new questions. But the one consistent thing was just even if like, one of the things that I've been blessed with after my mission, and even I learned this on my mission, and I try to instill this, my depth of belief in the concept of the eternal nature of man is what drives me. Trying to have an eternal view, like, not looking at my life right now, but in the eternal aspect of it. What does God want me to become? If I live faithful to what I know to be true, there's no blessing that God will withhold from me. And so that was my mentality when I started recognizing, okay, even if I do get divorced, because for me, in my mind, I was like, well, I'll just wait it out. All right, let's wait it out. You want to wait? Let's wait it out. And so come December, it's like, well, no, I ain't coming back. Like, I don't want to do it. And I'm like, okay, so I guess we're not going to wait it out. And I'm the one that actually filed for the divorce, but I wasn't. I was like, okay, I'll just wait. I'm willing to wait. I'm patient. I can be patient. God is just seeing if I can be patient. And it turned to just keeping the commandments. You'll be okay. Like, even if you don't get married again, which I was confident that I would, but my mentality was, even if you don't, if you be faithful, there's no blessing that God will withhold from you.
I love that idea of, like, I was going to ask you, what was giving you hope during this time, but I love your answer there where you said, one of the things that I've learned I learned as a missionary and through this time was the eternal nature of man, right? And of people. And there's a quote. This is Elder Holland. He says, "Indeed, if we finally lose hope, we lose our last sustaining possession. It was over the very gate of hell that Dante wrote a warning to all those traveling through the Divina Commedia. Abandon all hope," he said, "ye who enter here. Truly, when hope is gone, what we have left is the flame of the inferno raging on every side. So when our backs are to the wall, and as the hymn says, other helpers fail and comforts flee, among our most indispensable virtues will be this precious gift of hope, linked inextricably to our faith in God and to our charity to others." And I love that idea, right? That sometimes we can be at the lowest point and we can have nothing that we can think is of good that's going to come from this, but at the very minimum we can have that hope that things will change, that there will be a brighter day, or even just the hope that at some point I'll understand a little bit better why in the world I'm going through what I'm going through.
Right, yeah, but I think the enemy of our souls knows that truth too.
For
right?
sure.
The adversary knows that truth, and he knows that when hope is extinguished, effort goes with it.
Right.
Right. And that that's really that heartbeat, right? That last ember of faith is that hope that this will all work out in the end. And Tyler, that reminds that John Lennon quote, right?
Yeah.
It all works out in the end. If it hasn't worked out, it's not the end.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
And that gives us that eternal perspective, that there's another turn on the road, and we can't see it. We are finite, we are mortal people, and we are in the now. And we're even terrible at the now, right? But like, we don't see down the road. We don't see the turn down the road. And if we did, keeping that eternal perspective, we would always have hope.
Absolutely.
Always.
So
there's
go ahead, Allenmichael. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say there's as I was thinking about this, when I said that phrase, sojourn in the wilderness, I laughed. But as I thought about that, I thought about Lehi, Nephi, and his family, Lehi's family, and their journey in the wilderness. I've had sacred experiences pre-mission. Those experiences amplified on my mission. I had some really experiences where I know that was God, and I can't deny it because he knows that I know. And during this, I've had the most spiritual experiences of my life. And so I'm going through the hardest thing in my life up until this point, because I haven't, it's been pretty blissful pre-New Jersey. But I had so many experiences to where I couldn't doubt that I was going through this, and God was aware of that I was going through it. And it reminded me of how Nephi's recollection of their journey in the wilderness, and how even though they were going through hard things, God kept them in the more fertile parts of the land. They stayed in the more fertile parts of their journey, meaning the access to food was easy, or the soil was nice, or whatever the case may be, but he kept them in the parts during their travel where they would be spiritually edified. And he kept me spiritually edified in soil that I could spread my roots, my spiritual roots during this hard time. Because I could name 20 experiences where you'd be like, really? And one of them was writing in my journal back before I moved that this is going to be a refiner's fire. Like, I had no idea what I was going to go through, but looking back on that, I'm like, dang, I did a temple session with an apostle. Like, I'm talking to Elder Robbins at after state conference, like just chatting it up. I had so many experiences to where I knew God was with me.
Back up. Who?
So Elder Lindsey Robbins did it's crazy, man. This is crazy. So let's go back a little bit. So as I'm going through all of this, I'm extremely hurt. And I'm praying to Heavenly Father, like, hey man, why can't you just change her mind? Like, if we're both committed to God, why won't it just work? Why can't you just encourage her to come? And you know my heart and where I am. Like, why can't you just make this work? And I remember crying and praying one night, and the concept of agency hit me like a ton of bricks. And I understood the atonement in a way that I hadn't before. Like, God will not take away our agency. He allows us to choose things. And I that came to my mind, and I was like, dang, ain't nothing that, like, it has to be her choice. It has to be her choice. So a couple weeks pass by, we have state conference. Elder unique experience with Elder Runland and Elder Robbins, companions. It was during the dedication of the Philadelphia Temple. And so during state conference, I was talking to him a little bit, and I was just kind of sharing some things that I was going through in my life. And at the time, I was reading his book, Elder Robbins' book, Love is a Choice. If there are any married couples, I encourage them to read that book, Love is a Choice. After I had the experience of God saying, hey man, I'm not going to alter her agency. It's her choice. I stumble upon that book, Love is a Choice, and I'm reading it. And just so happens, as I finish it, Elder Robbins is coming to state conference with Elder Runland. And so I talked to him a little bit, and he was like, just keep living the principles in that book and everything will be okay. And I'm like, okay, well, he told me that everything's going to be okay. Like, my marriage is good. Little did I know everything would be okay, just not in the way that I, at the time, hoped that it would be okay. And so, like, I had I had spiritual experiences to where my reservoir pulls from to this day.
Hey, Allenmichael, you know who my mission president was?
Elder Robbins?
Lynn Grant Robbins.
Yeah,
in
I
Uruguay.
love Elder Robbins.
And yeah. he taught those principles, and it changed my life down there as well. That's cool. That's cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, love is a verb. Love is a choice.
It is a choice. And with that concept, it made going through what I was going through a little bit easier.
But think about what that does, right? Think about what that does, because love is just it's this ethereal thing, right? That, like, people just fall out of love, or the magic, it just isn't there anymore. That's crap. Right? What happens is somebody makes a choice, right? Somebody makes a choice to stop trying. Somebody makes a choice to put other people or other things in higher priority, right? And think about what that does. The knowledge of that would do for marriage, right? I agree. Get that book, hand out that book. Everybody read that book, because love is a verb, and we do have agency. And really, the only thing you can't control is your response to the situation. You can't control what your partner does, right?
Yeah.
Small world, man.
Yeah, that is that is pretty unique. And so, like, I'm going through this. I actually fly to Alabama, file for the divorce. At this point, I'm at peace with what's happened. A lot of people don't know. So, like, I'm like, all right, well, I got to break the news somehow. And I don't hold anything against her. Like, I can't imagine, as I've come to live my life, I don't know what she's been through in her life. Like, I don't know the things that she's dealing with. I mean, I knew some of them, but I'm not going to fault her for whatever it was that led her to believe that this wasn't it. This wouldn't work. It would be too hard, whatever the case may be. And so I don't have any ill feelings, and everything was really amicable. It didn't get, like you would think most divorces would be out of anger. Like, that was it. And I'm like, okay, well, now that's it. And so like I get the divorce. I filed it in February. It was finalized in March. And so I'm like, okay, I still don't really know what I'm doing. And at that time, I ended up going to Massachusetts to work. So I go into Massachusetts, and I just have a couple of guys come stay with me and work. And I was like, that ain't it. A bunch of buddies that it just wasn't what I needed at that time to grow spiritually, because they weren't members of the Church of Jesus Christ. Great individuals, but the morals and the principles, we weren't on the same page, and I didn't need to be around that after what I had just went through. And so one of my companions, and I love him to this day, Cole, he said, hey man, come out to Utah and work. And so he got me a job at Veterans First Mortgage, where that's what I did for work. Like, and I loved it. So I moved out to Utah, and I don't want to date. I don't want to date. That's all I can say. Like, I'm going to Utah, but I'm not healed. I don't want to be in a relationship. I don't want to date anyone. And as anyone who's a member of the Church of Jesus Christ and a young adult, there are plenty of options in Utah. It's a lot of people to date. You got a lot of members of the church and a lot of young people. You got 3 big universities. And so I go out to Utah. The Sojourn is over, and things are on the up and up. I'm optimistic. Like, I'm going out to work. I'm gonna get back in school. My priorities shifted. I go from selling solar to, okay, well, I need to get back in school. That's what I felt like I need to do. And I need to get away from being alone. And so I moved out to Utah with a family friend from Alabama. I stayed in their basement for a couple months. And I'm working at Veterans First, and I meet my sunshine. It's so weird. I met Marcy, and this was in August. So I moved to Massachusetts. I was there for probably about 4 months. And then I go out to Utah after that. And I'll tell you guys how I met Marcy and all that stuff. But
let me ask you a question, because I definitely want to hear about you and Marcy met, and I think that's a great story too. But talk to me about this in this time period when things are becoming finalized and you realize that the relationship is not going to be mended, right? And so it's going to be official. Was there a period of time where you felt like you needed to repair or focus on your spirituality and make that a focus?
So ironically, I never stopped with the process, and that's one thing that I've been consistent, and I'm even consistent now, is going to the temple, making sure I'm reading the scriptures, making sure I'm praying, making sure I'm going to church. Like, I was consistent with those things. I didn't feel like I was fighting God as much. Like, I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna do it. It ain't like it wasn't as much of a wrestle. I felt like it was like, all right, this is what I'm doing, and this is my path. Like, all right, you gotta fix it. You gotta do what you need to do and get where you need to go. So I don't think it wasn't anything I felt like I needed to repair. If anything, it became a little bit more lax. Like, I wasn't doing to change the outcome of something. I was just doing it because I was accustomed to doing it.
And I like that a lot. I think it's important, that I think that's important to hear. You mentioned several times that in the middle of it, you turned into things, right? You leaned harder into the things that you knew to search for answers. And I think that's an important reminder, right? I think there's a lot of people, and I probably could include myself in that, when things get tough, you start to question some things, and you start to, the tendency is to want to bail out on the process. I think that's an important lesson, Allenmichael, that hopefully, I'm listening to it and I'm inspired by that. When things are rough, lean into it and let's give it a chance to really do some work on you.
So Allenmichael, I don't know if I'm going to be able to articulate this next question. So bear with me. Uh, we've been doing this a little while. We sit down with guys and we try to learn. Up till now, pretty much everybody that is shared, I've been able to relate. I've been able to look at my own life and be able to pull an experience and have some empathy as they're sharing their journey, right? I don't know what it's like to experience divorce. But I will say this, in our church culture, we're not very good at empathizing with people that have. And so I'm curious, because part of this project for me, at least a little personal angle, we live as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, sometimes our lives are very insulated. It leads to a way of seeing the world that may not necessarily be the most accurate or the most empathetic. I think that we, myself included, are prone to judge, ironically, when the Savior has clearly commanded that we should not judge. And we get into we can get into some holier than thou behavior, right?
Yeah.
And I am curious. Before, I would love to hear the story, right? I'd love to hear that next chapter and how you meet Marcy. But before we go there, I am curious, how did you feel? How did we as a church community help you through that difficult phase in your life, or did we? Right? And what did you gain from it, and how can that help you help other people go through difficult things like divorce? Sorry.
Yeah.
A lot there.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like, if I hadn't had the experiences that I had, or the bishop that I had, because he was a marriage counselor, like, it don't get much more helpful than that. And so, like, it's hard for me to say, do this and it'll be good. Like, I feel like God just knows your circumstances. With whatever you go through, I feel like God knows that you're going through it. So take observation of what's around you and what's there and what you can pull on and what you can lean into, because that's my situation. God knew what I was going to go through in that moment, and he put the tools around me. So, like, outside of my bishop, my family was infuriated. Like, they were hurt because they had never seen me hurt like this. And so they were hurt. And my friends who were non-members gave me a lot of compassion and it's going to be all right, and love, which I was so grateful for. And my mission president, like, I only at that time, I only talked to people who I knew wouldn't judge me. Like, I only talked to people who I knew would listen and who I knew I could talk with. So it wasn't a lot. The church congregation, I didn't lean into that. I didn't go to church for those purposes. Like, I went to church to take the sacrament. I had a calling. I did that, and then I was just like, I was kind of out. I wasn't involved in church activities, but the people that loved me gave me the love that I needed, and I wasn't fearful of turning out to get that love. Like, talking to my mom, or talking to my mission president, or talking to my bishop, or talking to my friends, and they gave it to me when I needed it, and that sustained me. It was hard, man. Like, knocking doors for a living is hard. Knocking doors while you're divorced is even harder. Like, going through a divorce, knocking doors is even harder. And, like,
all aspects, right? All aspects of
such a lonely. Oh man, it's such a lonely job. A 1099 independent contractor knocking doors in New Jersey while going through a divorce. Like, it would be times where I'll be walking down the street just crying. I should
Hey,
be walking down the street crying.
it's very clear that this episode is not brought to you by the New Jersey Chamber of Commerce. We have no ill feelings about the state of New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
It just happened to be where your wilderness was.
But I will say
Disclaimer.
that it maybe we don't have anything against New Jersey. That was where the wilderness was. But it sounds to me like New Jersey was full of angels.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because you did say when you moved to Utah, you weren't ready to date because you weren't healed yet.
Mm-mm.
Can you talk a little bit about that healing process?
Yeah. Marcy is central to that. And like, she loves me, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but she has helped heal me, and she's given me the love from a spouse that I've needed, and the commitment. She's shown the commitment that I was longing for. Healing, and it's not, healing doesn't happen overnight. It's not some magical bullet that I'm healed, or like, oh, now that you're divorced, or you're healed. No, those wounds are still there. And I have to catch myself when those wounds are feeling like I'm scabbing at them. And I have to make sure that that's a wound, that's okay, continue to move forward, because it still hurts. Like, it doesn't hurt as bad, but the love that my wife gives me feels that hurt. So I can say the way to heal is to love. That is how you heal. That's how the healings helped me. During the time that I was going through it all, the love from my friends and my bishop and my parents and my siblings and my companions, like that's the love that helped me heal. And as I moved to Utah, I went out to Utah in August the 3rd, I think, or something like that. The second day I was there, I saw Marcy, and I have not forgotten seeing her face. We were at this like college event, and I saw her, and I was like, man, she is attractive. And it didn't leave me. And we exchanged information, and we haven't stopped talking since.
I love it. You know, what I love, Allenmichael, one of the things that has always struck me about you is your ability to show love to other people, right? I really admire that about you. And we talked about that in our first conversation on the podcast, is that ability that you have. And you kind of talked about where that came from and how that was fostered. And it's interesting, right? Because here we are, you've gone through this major event, and you're struggling, and you say, well, here's how you heal. It's that you love. And I think that preparation in your life and that ability to love, here we go. Now it's really needed, right? It's needed pretty badly. And you're able to kind of move out of that because of that, those things that your mom instilled in you, your dad instilled in you, the other experiences that you've had that led you to this point. It's all this culmination of events that gets us where we need to be. And I really believe, Mike and Allenmichael, that if you took that timeline of events that happened in our lives and we deleted some of those events, we went back, we said, yeah, I didn't like this one, I'm gonna take that out of there. Where we are today would look different. And I'm not saying it would look different and look better. I think we need to have those things happen. We need to go through those things. And then at the end, if we make the choices to love and to lean into our faith and to try to grow those things, we're going to be even more powerful at the end. But if we could go back, and I've had people say to me before, I wish I could go back and just delete that. I don't want to ever experience that. I never wanted to experience that. But you know what? We're sitting in a room together talking today, and we're feeling the way that we're feeling, and you're sharing the things that you're sharing because of those events that happened. I really believe that we, they're important and they're transformative. if we use them the way they're intended for us to use them, which is to spring us forward.
Hey, Allenmichael, you talked about there were times walking door to door in New Jersey crying.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where we're at, right? This is a platform and this is what it is, right? It's a humble little podcast project. But
Yeah.
hypothetically, let's say we're in someone's ear right now and they're where you were and they're walking and they're crying. What would you say to that person?
It's okay to cry. Like, it's okay. It is okay. Because the tears will stop one day.
I love that, and I think that there's a message in that message, which is we got to keep pushing it forward, right?
I love that word forward, man. You've said that a couple times. That is my new word, right? Like I'm a one word guy and I love that word, right? I'm putting it everywhere, all over my life as a reminder, whether it's social injustice, right? Whether it's this COVID thing and pulling out of this, whether it's my progress and trying to improve, just forward. Love the hope that word gives us.
And I also like that message of it's okay to cry, right? I mean, we gotta deal with the emotions that we have, and we have to deal with the circumstances that we're in. And sometimes in there's a culturally we're supposed to swallow those and just suck it up and move on. And I think I like that message that it's okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to mourn, and but understand that we have that hope that things will be better as we push it forward. Right?
Well, and there's some acceptance that comes with that.
Absolutely.
Right, and I think that until you can accept it, right? If you're trying to hang on to this false reality, or you're not aware exactly of your situation, right? I think you try to put on that brave face, but letting other people in, again, not everybody. Allenmichael did in your story, it's that circle of trust. It's those people that know there won't be judgment, right? You're not oversharing and blasting it on social media, right? You're not asking for everybody.
Yeah.
You're asking for a few.
So talk to us. We're in Utah now. Marcy is
the
in
land of milk and honey, right?
Yeah. I love
land of milk and honey.
I love this idea that the sojourn in the wilderness, and here we are. We've reached the edge of the woods, and Marcy's kind of this ray of light, right? So let's talk to us a little bit more about Marcy and where you guys are, and I mean, look, the world needs to know Marcy. I can tell you
they
that.
do. Yeah, she is a ball of fire, and if you cold, she gonna warm you up. If you hot, she gonna make you hotter. Like, she is. She is a ball of fire. It's unique, man. So my divorce was, the timeline of things is married in September, decision made in January, January is New Year's, which I think that that made everything harder going through the holidays.
Oh yeah.
Experiencing that. Decision made, divorce filed for in February, was finalized in late March, mid-March, somewhere around there. And so now I'm officially single. I can date at this point. I don't want to. And so I go out to Utah for a buddy of mine's wedding. One of my companions, actually, one of my closest friends.
A wedding isn't necessarily your problem, your number one choice. Right?
If it wasn't him, I would not have went. Yeah. I've only since attended. During that time, I attended 2 weddings. One of them was for one of my favorite companions, Cole, and the other one was for my other favorite companion, Parker. and the only 2 weddings out of whatever I went to, and it was hard to go through those. But so Parker, I went out there and I ended up going to this. At this point, people are starting to like, people that know me is like, well, your wife's not here. What's going on? And so I'm having to break it to people, and at this point, like more people in my circle know. I don't know. I may have made a Facebook post about it or something like that. And so we end up going to this event at Utah Valley University, and I see Marcy, and I am just immediately attracted to her. And she spoke very little English at the time. Looking back on it, I was like, well, why wasn't she really talking to me that much? It was because she just didn't speak that much English. And so we end up exchanging information, and we go on a date. Our first date was, she was my date to my friend's wedding dinner. And so like I'm showing up, like they're like, wait, you're not married anymore? She know who you married, right? And so we go on the date.
I like that.
Yeah. And so we didn't start dating right away, but we talked every day for hours, and we started dating in September. I was like, all right, well, we started dating. Like she wanted to date me. She made it evident, and that's what I had been longing for. Like, I want to be wanted. I don't want to really do all the, hey, I want to date you, or hey, let's go on a date. Like, she was aggressive, and I was like, I like that. I needed that. She was more on the aggressive side, and so we end up dating for a couple months, and everything's going good. Like, we got a lot in common. Our histories are similar. Like, this is really good. And so around December, November-ish, I started like saying to myself, I can see myself with her. And it was weird because I didn't want those feelings, but those thoughts was like, hey, you can be with her. And it wasn't anything I was praying about. I wasn't praying about marriage for her. Like, I didn't feel comfortable praying about it. To be honest, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't pray about it. Like, I don't know. But the thoughts start coming like, hey, you guys, you can spend forever with her. And so a couple weeks go by, and I'm reading the scriptures, and I come across a verse that really stood out to me. It was in Moroni, and I think it's chapter 10 or 7, maybe chapter 7, where Moroni says, everything that inviteth and enticeth to do good is from God. And another one, that anything that persuaded us to believe the Christ is from God, paraphrasing. And I started thinking like, dang, Marcy makes me want to be a better person. And I had a desire to marry her. I was like, okay, I can marry her. And that I never thought I would have that desire again. And I had went on dates previous to meeting Marcy. I went on a couple dates. I was just like, I'm just like, I don't really want to date you for a long time. I'm dating you to get my mind off what's going on, right? Like, I don't really want to date, but this is cool. I hope they don't listen to this if they know who they were. But and so I'm dating Marcy, and it's like, yeah, this feels good. And so we start talking about it, like, hey, I like you, and I can see myself marrying. At this point, she knows I'm divorced. She knows everything I'm going through and things like that. And I was like, all right, but if we do it, we just have to do it. I couldn't go through the big wedding again. I couldn't do that. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do it. And she was an angel in this regard, that it didn't bother her. And I was like, okay, now I know I can marry you. And we started talking about it more, and we got engaged, and we got married in January. So we started dating in September, was talking since August, and got married in January. And people thought I was crazy. Rightfully so. my parents were like, wait, what? You married again already? Right. And
were there some Ross from Friends references? I'm thinking, 2 quick marriages.
Yeah, they like, and rightfully so. And I'm like, I can't deny what I feel like God is telling me. And so like, I'm not going to, one of the things that I said to myself when I started having these thoughts is that I'm not going to allow my first experience, because I believe wholeheartedly that I was inspired to enter into that marriage. And I believe wholeheartedly that if we were both committed to making it work, it would have worked. And so I'm not going to say, well, God, you led me to marry her and that shouldn't happen. I believe that God led me to do that. Whether it ended up going the way that it should have went is a different story. But I'm not going to take away what I felt God was putting in my heart to do. And I felt like he was doing that again with Marcy, because I felt she was committed to me. And I put her through the ringer. Like, it was some trying times where like I asked her to do stuff that, like, in reference to random stuff, that she would be like, okay, that's not a problem. I'm like, okay. Okay, that's all right. And so she was committed to me and I was committed to her, and we've been committed and happy, and our joy is increasing, which is one of the things that I love. Like, we got married and her family was like, you sure? And my family was like, are you really sure? and we've had our, like, every marriage argues, but I don't think there's not a thought that crosses my head where I ever question if she's committed to our marriage. And it's vice versa. And we have joy, like, we have happiness, we see a future. The covenants that we've made in the temple in regards to our sealing mean something to us. And we really believe that that's for eternity. And she has been the apple and the center of my eye. And like, it's just been the hurt. Alma, a prophet in the Book of Mormon, he talked about being racked with sorrow. And then he talked about the joy that Christ brought. And the joy outweighed the sorrow.
Literally same page, right? One column,
yeah,
one
yeah.
column.
Yeah, and so the joy that Marcy brings me and the commitment that I feel from her, it outweighs the sorrow that I experienced in New Jersey. And so what I traded, I would definitely trade. I don't want to go through that crap, but I would want to end up with Marcy. Like, if I could not go through that and end up with Marcy, I would be excited, but it's paid dividends for me.
If I could just steal a page out of Tyler's book, Tyler has said to me, on and off the air, that, that a lot of people, they look to change their circumstances to try to fix problems, right? Or to try to improve. Like, I'll be better when I get a different job or a different boss, or I'll be better when I move, right? So that I just want to make sure that everyone understands that Utah didn't solve it.
No,
Utah didn't fix it, right? Boasten, or the move didn't change. You changed. You did that work, and you healed, and then Utah just happened to work out to be the happy ending. But I think a lot of times we're chasing that happy ending by bringing in an exterior change, when really the interior work is what needs to be done, right? Tyler, how did I do? Isn't that about?
That, you summed it right up. I couldn't have said it better. It's that idea of, wherever we go, there we are. Right?
Yep.
And we can't just run away from our problems. But I love. I'm so glad that we did part 2 with Allenmichael tonight. I gotta tell you.
Though, I honestly, as I listen to this, I think of Stephen Mitchell and that analogy of rear view mirror and windshield.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
And how we need to have those in proportion. We have small rear view mirrors for a reason. We can't go forward with large rear view mirrors and small windshields. And when you were talking about how your marriage, that joy is increasing, let me tell you what 21 years feels like, brother. Right? Because it's that.
Yeah.
You have that large windshield where you're just looking at, let's go get life. right? Let's go tackle life. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to have arguments, right? But those are all in the rearview mirror, and you learn from them, but you can't move forward. I got a good friend who this, don't try this at home, but he would be driving to Utah and driving across the lovely state of Nevada. And he would try to drive forward by looking in the rearview mirror, right? You don't do that.
Which is altogether possible on that stretch of road through Nevada.
Yeah.
This episode will not be brought to you by the Nevada Chamber of Commerce either. But I mean, I love that comment. I love that comment because to me, that's hope, right? Yeah. That's the fruit of love. The fruit of love is, I knew I wanted to marry the girl I married when I saw no end. I saw no end. We hung out together and it was like, I could do this forever. There's no annoying little thing that's going to be like, nope, that will do it. Eventually I will get sick of that thing and that'll be the end, right? And there was no end. And when you can touch that, even better when you can put a ring on it, you'd be a fool not to play that game, right? Even though the first one didn't work out. I love the idea of like, I'm not going to hamstring my future and the purpose of my life because of one prior experience. And that sounds really easy to say, not easy to do, brother. So I appreciate and commend you for that, for courage, for just living.
Yeah, and I'm grateful for your willingness to share, this. I mean, that's not the easiest thing in the world either, to sit down and.
Yeah, I don't talk about it. I haven't. Like, this is the most in depth that I've went into it with anyone other than Marcy.
And I hope that Allenmichael, that in the process of that, as we talk about these kind of things, I feel like, that's our opportunity to really kind of, like you've done tonight so well. You've talked about the pain, but at the end of this, I mean, I feel like there's been blessings sprinkled throughout that journey that you've told us about. Even in the darkest moments, you talked about angels. You talked about experiences that you had. You talked about, I think that's key, right? I mean, when we're told to find joy in the journey, that sounds really easy until we hit the parts of the journey that are like this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and finding joy in that is like, what? How?
Right. But here you are. We look at that journey and where you ended up, and thank goodness for Marcy, and Mike needs to have the pleasure of meeting Marcy one of these days, because she is everything that Allenmichael says she is. And I told Allenmichael I'm not running a marathon with him, but I'll run it with Marcy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you're a blessed man, and we talked about what is it like to be the richest man in town last time we got together. In sharing this story tonight, is there anything that you would add to that? What let me ask you that question again. What does it mean to you to be the richest man in town?
It's funny that now that I've talked about this, like, my perspective is it means having a wealth of experiences. Like, don't trade your experiences. You think of a rich, wealthy man, they got money in the bank. And I joke about being 30, and I'm like, dude, I've lived enough for 2 lives. I feel like I've been through enough for 2 lives, and that wealth of experience make me rich, because it gives me direction. It makes my future endless because of what I've experienced in my past.
And I think of some of the things that you shared in that last episode, with where you were talking about being a resource to your community. And being in a position where you're going to be able to help other people. And that is the amazing thing about the experiences that we have. Not only are they customized to help us, they're customized down the road when we come across other people. And there's going to be times, Allenmichael, where someone's going to be sitting down with you and you're going to be able to provide counsel. that only you can provide.
Absolutely right.
And I know that. Book it. And you can call me when it happens, and you can buy me lunch, because that's going to happen.
It's going to happen multiple times. I love the story, the journey that we've gone on tonight, and then also in the last episode we did together. But life sometimes throws some things at us, some curveballs that we don't expect, and it can get pretty rough. But what I love about what we've talked about tonight is we've talked about the rough things, but here we are. I mean, life is good. Life is really, really good. And it's even sweeter when we've experienced some of those things that we can look at and say, hey, I wouldn't use that. I don't want to do that again. But dang, did I learn some things going through that. Right?
Well, and I appreciate seeing life through your eyes.
Yeah.
Right. We talk about that perspective and how important it is for us to keep our own perspective on the length of things. But it's also important for us to try to see life through other people's perspective so that we can be more sympathetic, more compassionate, less judgmental, right? Life does not follow a script. You can try all you want. You can try to write it, right? But it doesn't follow a script that we are aware of. There is a course, and there is a God, and He knows the course, and we work through that process. We align our will with His, and we reap the blessings. And I feel the blessings of hanging out with you, Allenmichael, and I love your story, and I cannot wait to see what you and your bride do next.
I was just going to say, it's Allenmichael is 30 years old. Are you 30 right now? You're not even 30.
I turned 30.
Not even 30?
No.
In September.
Okay, man, you are 29 years old. So look, we're going to do this. We're going to reprise this episode. We're going to do 29. 5 years when Allenmichael is the leader of men. And hey, want to say book it. Allenmichael is a leader of men.
Do you remember, man? Do you remember being 29?
Yeah, I thought I knew everything, man. I've got kicked in the rear end so many times since then. It's crazy.
I can say that I have not. The old saying. I think it was President Kimball. Give me this mountain. I can assure you, I have not prayed for trials since. That's
actually a quote. That's a quote from the Old Testament. Caleb in the Old Testament.
Absolutely.
Said, give me this mountain. And that is my freaking bumper sticker. I love that verse. It is marked in every one of my kids' scriptures with a star on it, so that when I die, they know that was written on their dad's heart. Give me
my mission president, President Schmidt. I hate running. Absolutely hate it. Hate it with a passion. The mission set up a rule that we had to run 3 times a week. I was an obedient missionary, but there was one rule that I was just like, running 3 times a week. Anyway, so he calls me in and we have this interview and he whips out that story. He's like, you can run, you can do hard things. And he tells me the story and it has not left me since. And it's what motivated me to run a marathon. And so I ran a marathon because of that, but I reflect on that deeply and often. Like, you can do hard things because of the Savior, Jesus Christ.
Give me this mountain. I love that.
Allenmichael Boasten, once again, you've killed it, my friend. And
appreciate you guys having me on.
I'll speak for Mike a little bit here, but we love having you here, and your words have been awesome. And there's going to be someone, Mike alluded to this, there's going to be someone that has this show in their ears, and they're going to hear your words, and they're going to do a 180 because of that. And that's the whole point, right? Is that we have these relationships, we have these interactions, and we make change because of the goodness of these people that have come into our lives. My life is enriched because of my interactions with Allenmichael Boasten, And I'm grateful for you, my friend.
Appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, and Allenmichael, I just want to say too, like, it is about hope. In this day, we need to be helpful and we need to be hopeful. If we can't take our daily actions and hang them on one of those two hooks, stop doing it. We either need to be helpful or hopeful. And folks that are listening it's going to resonate with situations where hope is in jeopardy, right? It could be marriage. It could be financial. It could be health. It could be a lot of challenges these days. But Allen, you taught us powerfully tonight about the power of hope. So thank you.
Go tell Marcy that we'll give you back to her now, and tell her we said hi. And I look forward to our next conversation. Hopefully it's out here in San Diego at some point, you know.
Marcy's days are numbered though, because if we ever do a ladies' night on Richest Men in Town, she's first on the invite list.
You'll have to have some bilingual speakers. You can't get to know Marcy unless she's comfortable around me being exuberant. But you get her Spanish speaking, oh my goodness.
Oh man, I served in Uruguay, brother. We could do.
You're good, yeah.
Version of Richest Men in Town. We got to appeal to that South American audience, anyways.
Yes, that's right. Hey, have a good night. We'll do it again. I mean it. 5 years, Allenmichael Boasten. You're gonna come back and drop some more knowledge on us, and I'm looking forward to it. So.
Yeah, well, I look forward to it too. Appreciate it, guys.
Yep.
All
let's
right.
keep in touch, my friend. Bye.
Bye.
Good idea, Ernie. A toast to my big brother George, the richest man in town.